Session 4 is Marketing Food to Diverse Audiences. Manuel Garcia-Garcia will moderate a panel discussion on the business case for inclusive advertising. Manuel will explain that the food and beverage industry has plenty of room for improvement when it comes to the representation in advertising, but he'll also demonstrate how inclusive marketing can build stronger, more meaningful connections between brands and consumers. Manuel, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Very excited about this session. Definitely, so I'm Manuel Garcia-Garcia, twice. I'm the global lead of neuroscience at Ipsos, but I also have the honor to co-lead employee resource group on anti-racism with my good friend April Jeffries. And that ERG, that employee resource group, is called Bridge. And Bridge stands for being racially inclusive and diverse is good for everyone. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. That's the conversation that we're going to have here with this great company that we have today. So hello, Erica.
Hello.
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So
Thank
exciting.
you.
I think it'd be amazing if you tell us about your role
Sure.
at Kellogg, because I think it's like really interesting how you guys are organized and your team, and then you have the opportunity to introduce yourself.
Great, thank you so much.
Of course.
Hello everyone, my name is Erica Jones and I am the Senior Manager of Cultural and Inclusive Marketing at the Kellogg Company. Been with the company for 9 years in a variety of marketing roles in pretty much all of our business units. So everything from cereal to snacks to frozen foods. And about a year and a half ago, at the beginning of 2021, our team was established. And as everyone knows, with everything that happened in 2020, a lot of companies doubled down on their ED&I commitments, right? And so Kellogg was one of those. And while diversity has always been important to the company and a part of our strategy of having a seat for everyone at the table, the company wanted to make an even larger commitment. So our team was established to really embed ED&I within the Kellogg North American Marketing Organization. We're focused on 3 things. That's people, go-to-market, and industry. In terms of people, it's making sure our marketers understand the importance of inclusive marketing. So we have various trainings, professional development, et cetera. And the second is go-to-market. So that's providing insights to the teams on inclusive marketing, creative feedback when we're working with agencies, to media strategy, et cetera. And then the third is industry. So making sure that we're learning from leaders in the industry, bringing the outside in, and then also sharing case studies and examples of the work we've done. So I like to say we're almost like internal consultants. We're a small but mighty team of 3, and we work across all of our business units, all of our category teams. And we do have several brands that we do lean into within each category, but we are a resource for the entire organization. So it's been great, and we also work very closely with our BERGs. At Kellogg, we call them BERGs, and I'll talk more about it later, Business Employee Resource Groups, and to really be sure that our members of various diverse cohorts are also connected into our marketing organization.
And that's a very exciting conversation, because obviously we've talked before, as you might know, and it's really exciting how they leverage the talent that they have in the employee resource groups, but you have to wait for that. Because now we have color coordinated. Lisa, tell us about yourself.
Thank you. This was not planned.
I didn't get the memo.
So I'm Lisa Zielinski. I work at Ipsos in our Creative Excellence division, and so I lead a team of researchers. We work with advertising day in and day out, and I have had a really good pleasure of, in last year, working on a lot of research that we did around racial and gender equity in advertising. That was really interesting, really talking to consumers about what do they want to see from brands, how do they want to be depicted in advertising, what's really gonna move the needle forward. And really tying that to business results. So I'll be sharing some nuggets from that today. And I also have a lot of clients in the food and beverage space, so hello to all watching. And I've been working really closely with clients in integrating measures around diversity and inclusion when they're doing their advertising research, so that we can really understand, are we actually moving the needle on this, and really making change for good over time. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you all for being here. So I was thinking, and feel free to comment on that, about like two different opportunities that cultural diversity brings to the food and beverage industry. So one, thinking of the panel before us, thinking about sustainability and food production that is good for people, but also good for the planet. Cultural diversity can bring a lot of that. So something that was mentioned was seaweeds, which is like super common in some cultures. We never thought of that before in other cultures, right? We talk about insects. It's not even that weird. Like, I'm a big fan of chapulines, which is like very common in Mexico. Who's tried chapulines here? And they're good, they're very well seasoned. And those are grasshoppers, for those who don't know. And also I have to recommend escamoles. That's like caviar, but ants, like ants' eggs. And that's like very weird. Like, I never thought of that growing up. But that's a huge opportunity of sustainable food production that can come from learning from other cultures, and also cultural integration, because we have a lot of Mexican culture like integrating with the rest of the United States. So that's something I thought there's a good opportunity on like bringing cultural diversity. And the other one is more like the emotional side of food, right? And because it's a big part of our identity. Food is how most people share their culture. We ran obviously some surveys, as you'd think that we would do. And we see that for most Americans, food is a way to share my culture with those I love. I like to make gazpacho for my friends when they come to a grill, and to express yourself or your individuality with others through food. And that's like for majority of total US, but it's even higher for Black, Hispanic, and Asian Americans. So it's definitely a key component for the food industry. But I want to ask you how is also diversity good for business?
Yeah, so through the research that I was mentioning that we did, we took a look at our database overall and tried to understand what is the actual business impact of positive and diverse portrayal of people in advertising. I think we all think okay, this makes sense. Like when you see yourself in an ad, or when you see something that reflects you and is relevant to you, that's the kind of advertising that really stands out to you and that motivates you and that you remember. So we wanted to prove that out. And when we do advertising research, we collect a measure called REM, which is the racial equity measure. And what we did was we looked at how ads that performed really strong on REM in terms of delivering a really positive and authentic portrayal of people of color, how those set of ads performed on some of our KPIs that are aligned with business results versus poorer performers. So not necessarily bad ads, but just ones that didn't really get into that next threshold, if you will. And we were able to prove out that having a more positive and diverse portrayal of people in your advertising actually does drive these business results in terms of the short-term choice for your brand and that long-term relationship building power of the advertising. So really, something that I think we've all felt and knew to be true inside is playing out in the data, which is really cool to see.
What do you think, Erica?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important as well to have various cohorts, cultures represented in the ads to make sure it's authentic and, going beyond just talent, but also, thinking about the insight up front, right? So at the beginning of the process, then all the way through to talent. So that's something that we're doing as well. It's table stakes to have diverse talent, but then also making sure that we have the insight at the beginning.
I think now this is DEI, IND, DNI, EDI, BDEI. All these things are at the core of every brand strategy, but that was not always the case. That was not the case that long ago. So how do we start? Where do you start if you're a brand and you want to do things better?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, not every company has the luxury of a lovely team like Erica's, which is amazing, and I hope that we see more and more teams like hers form. But I think one of the first things that brands can do is really to identify a common language that they use around their goals in this space, and really understanding, where is our brand today and where do we want to go in the future? What makes sense for us? If you don't have a common language yet, this is a framework that we use with our clients to just really kind of get us talking around it by using this common language. So just kind of breaking down here this hierarchy, you'll see that the bottom two kind of rungs of the pyramid are really in the executional space. So when I'm delivering an ad execution, I can think about representing all sorts of people in really positive and authentic ways, and making sure that that representation is coming across appropriate and moving the needle forward and non-stereotypical. And then you can also think beyond that around the authenticity piece. And this is really where the execution is designed to kind of authentically reference or reflect a certain culture. So it's not just, I included an Asian American in my ad, but I'm showing a setting or a situation that is really going to resonate with that consumer, or tell a broader audience something about that consumer's life as well, in a positive way. So one example of an ad that is in this category is one that I love from Zillow, where there's a U.S. Hispanic American family searching for a new home. And the story is around a multi-generational family where, their grandmother is searching for the home with them and very part of that buying process, and really showing kind of all facets of how that comes to life. So that's a good example of kind of a more authentic portrayal. And then in these kind of upper tiers, what we like to think is more, strategic. And this is exactly what Erica was just talking about, where even before we even get to the executional phase, we're making a strategic decision that we're going to have an inclusive insight, and really making sure that our advertising is built on some kind of insight into a specific culture. So again, a very strategic decision for a brand, might not be for every brand, but that's kind of the next level, if you will. And then finally, like at this top tier is purpose. And this is where we're using, marketing or advertising to really actively promote our brand's purpose or societal change that we want to see. So like Ben & Jerry's is a really good example of a brand that, really advocates for anti-racism and uses their marketing and their advertising dollars to really push that agenda forward. Again, this is not a tier that every single brand is going to play in, and it's not meant to be like, you have to get to the top of the mountain, because it is a very strategic choice, and I think we'll talk about authenticity, but that's really, if you're playing at that level, you have to really have everything from your business kind of come through that lens.
That's ambitious.
Yes.
It is very ambitious. I remember like about 10 years ago that you tell me, because you're more of an expert in advertising, but like 10 years ago, the scope was very different. And then I spent some time as a researcher at the Advertising Research Foundation. And I think that was like the time where like most brands were pivoting from the mainstream advertising that was advertising for white and straight, and then having like multicultural campaigns for different communities. And at some point, like I think around 2015, you start seeing the total market strategy, so trying to represent everyone in your advertising. So I was wondering how y'all think that we're doing in that front. So I have a question for all of you. I don't know if it's on your screen or not.
Yeah, it's up there.
There you go. So if you want to scan your QR code, the question is, since 2020, what do you think is the percentage of ads within the ads that have people in it that feature a person of color? Dun, 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 dun.
Surprise.
Should we reveal?
Yeah, I think so. We have 30, that's good.
Okay. We have good news for all of you. We're doing better than you think. So that's great. Let me show you more detailed data, because we also have data in this page specific for your industry. Oh. Oops. Here you go. So we have, as we said, 72% of the ads that include people, humans in it, that feature a person of color, 70% within the food and beverage industry, so pretty much at parity. And within ads that place a person of color in a primary role, that's 44% in general, 45% within this industry. I think something that's very important is, and where a big part of the opportunity lays, is ads that place a person of color in a primary role, but also defy stereotypes. And that's, we're all pretty low on all of that. So we all can think of examples in which you can see a creative and be like, Asian, check, Hispanic, check, gay, check, and then with all these stereotypes, and that doesn't work out. So authenticity, which was like the second step in that pyramid, is absolutely key, because the representation by itself could be bad, indeed. So how do you ensure authenticity in this process?
Yeah, part of that ensuring the authenticity is making sure that we're creating this with the community versus for a community, so with. So we leverage our Bergs again, so whether that's the Latino Employee Resource Group or the Kellogg African American Resource Group, et cetera, to really be business partners with us in this process. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later, but bringing them in earlier in the process, a lot of times before it was more ad hoc, like maybe at the end, of a process, we show it to the Berg, like, hey, what do you think of this? Like, any concerns, any watch outs, right? But now we're bringing the Bergs in even earlier in the process, understanding the insights, getting feedback early on, and then being sure that they're a part of the process throughout. So, we're doing this for everything from like young professionals looking at Gen Z to our K-Pride, working with LGBTQ+. So we work with all of the different Bergs on various brands and various initiatives, which is really important and has really done a lot to advance our work.
I think that's super interesting, like the way you leverage your talent within the business employee resource groups, because that brings a lot of ideas. So as I said before, I'm co-leading the EOG and anti-racism within Ipsos, but I'm also leading this group that we're putting together. As you know, like Ipsos has presences like in 90 countries, so there's like a lot of knowledge there. We're putting together a team in which are experts in diversity and inclusion from all the different regions in the planet. So like in diversity and inclusion has different priorities in different countries and in different regions, and sort of means different things, but there's like this huge body of knowledge there that is like super exciting. It's like the favorite thing I've done in my whole career. So I love that you guys are like operationalizing that.
Yeah.
So that's great. And you, Lisa, how do you guys help your clients ensure authenticity?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the employee resource groups are awesome, and yes, and but talking with consumers directly as well is like another aspect that we can think about. And an early stage, like you're talking to, really getting their feedback on that insight. Is it actually resonating with them? Is it reflecting their reality? Measurement is really kind of a small building block towards moving in this right direction and bringing more authentic portrayals to life. So I talked a little bit about the racial equality measure, so you guys know what that one's about, really understanding if that representation is authentic and respectful and defying stereotypes like we just talked about. There's very few ads that actually kind of break the mold of how people of color are shown, and they, when we talk to people of color, they want to be shown in more rich and authentic ways where they are featured as the main character, as a business leader, as someone in a position of power, or dark skin being shown as beautiful. These are some of the things that really came out when we talk to people of color in our research. So really kind of pushing the needle on that and measuring how we're doing against that over time. And then our cultural authenticity module, which Erica will talk about, and some of the results from that in a second when we talk about the case study. So I just wanted to kind of provide some context to what that is here. That's some research that we can add on to a pre-test, which you'll show, to really understand how that ad is resonating with people of the culture that it was designed for. So, is it reflecting back positively on the brand's values? Is it really building cultural pride and is something that they can see themselves in that situation? And is it authentic? So coming back to that authenticity and making sure that we're really hitting the needle on the head there for that particular audience. So yeah, I think those are like two amazing ways to make sure that authenticity is coming through, is just getting that feedback from any places that you can and really keeping the consumer at the center.
It's super important. You don't want to offend your consumers, and it seems like super stupid, but there's a process behind that, and it happens, and we've all known of trials that have failed in the past years. Mm-hmm. So now we have a treat for everyone. That is this very fresh ad, right? Because it's like rolling out this week, right?
It's rolling out very soon in the next few days. So this is a sneak peek behind the curtain. You all are among the first to see it, of some work that we are going to be launching next month, just again about a week, on Rice Krispies treats. And this is specifically focused on the U.S. Hispanic consumer. So we have 2 spots for this. We're only going to show the U.S. Hispanic spot, but we have this that we want to show you, and then I'll chat a little bit more about the case.
Let's roll the tape.
Soy José Luis Ramos Cortés. Llevo a toda mi familia en mi nombre y mi snack favorito es Rice Krispies Treats de Kellogg's. Arroz inflado con marshmallow.
Rice Krispies Treats de Kellogg's. Una barrita de arroz unida como tu familia.
Anyone care to?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't understand, I forgot the name of the kid, but he says, my name is José Luis Ramos Cortés. Was it José Luis?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. And I carry my name, my whole family on my name, and my favorite treat is Rice Krispies treat. Yep. As some of you will know, many of us have 2 last names. Some of us keep the 2 last names when we become American, or as in this case, probably he was born. And it's one from the father, one from the mother. Manuel Garcia-Garcia, so I probably carry half the Hispanic population of the world in my names. But that's what the ad is referring to.
Yep. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this, which is really exciting and just shows how powerful it is when you collaborate with various stakeholders. So with this, of course, first we started off with the growth opportunity. So we knew Rice Krispies Treats had an opportunity to grow with the U.S. Hispanic consumer. Next was leveraging those insights, right? And we knew that his family is important to, well, many communities, and especially within the Hispanic community. So we wanted to be sure we were leaning into that insight. And family is important in general as well. So in our total market spot, it's also focused on family, but we wanted to really examine some of the nuances within the Hispanic culture. And so we worked with our agency on this, Leo Burnett, and they brought back, several different scripts. And then at that point, we brought in our Hola Berg, which is for our Latino Employee Resource Group. So we brought in maybe 2 or 3 members of that Berg to get feedback, initial feedback. In what was their initial reaction? What did they think of the scripts, any watch-outs, et cetera? And overall, we had 2 scripts that everyone really, really loved. And this is before even the testing. And so any feedback they gave us, we took it into account. We shared it with the agency team, et cetera. Next was testing. So we want to be sure that this ad tested well. And so we tested it with Ipsos and wanted to be sure that we also got a read on the cultural authenticity model, et cetera. And so we were really excited to see these results come back, in that, it was green, it was off the charts. As a marketer, this isn't always something you see when you test creative, so we were really excited, and the biggest challenge was just choosing, hey, among the 2 Hispanic spots we had, which one to even move forward with. And we decided to move forward with this one. It's called The Name. So as you see here, it's the score was 192, off the charts. And we were just really excited with that. And it just shows how the brand team partnered with cultural and inclusive marketing, and then as well with the Bergs and the agency to create very strong work. And then I was a part of the process of production. So casting, looking at, actually being virtually on set with them when they were filming it, et cetera. And so all the way through to this final work. So I think it's just a great example of, when you start and collaborate at the beginning, you can really have great work. And this is among, the top Spanish language ads we've had at the company. So also top performing in Ipsos Creative Effect Index, strong relevance, appeal, and uniqueness. It feels authentic to the culture, so we want to make sure it's authentic, and it even instilled cultural pride, and then reflects positively on the brand's values. So here it is. We're focused on family, but with the nuances of in the Latino culture, the last name is oftentimes including both sides of the family, right? And leaning into that, and then having that come through in this ad.
Super interesting.
Yeah. Yep. It's awesome. It's an awesome case. I think it's not something that you see a lot, as you were saying. It's not, easy to get all of those feels right and have it pay off for the brand and pay back on the brand. And I think that, this spot really was able to do that. And I think a lot of it probably has to do with a lot of the early kind of upstream work that you did to, understand what the brand's role could be within this particular culture. Yep. So,
and then even on the tagline at the end, it's like, unida como tu familia, like, so united like your family. So we're even, just bringing in those nuances even more. So yeah, really exciting.
Love it. I love how it turned out.
Yes. Congrats. So that was the sneak peek.
That's a super cool case. You're welcome for that. So I wanted to ask you something, because we've been talking a lot about creative and the whole process of developing creative and making it representative and making it authentic. And that's now it seems like the low-hanging fruit now that we're like sort of getting to figure it out. But there are like so many more opportunities, like I was mentioning before, the connection with the food, but like also the food you eat, not just how you see yourself portrayed eating something else on TV, or the opportunity to bring something that's more sustainable from a different culture into another culture. So I was wondering if within your role that is not focused on creative, that goes across, do you also work on integrating cultural fluency in the development of new foods, of new products?
Yeah, so that's another area we're focused on is innovation. So embedding our Bergs into our innovation process as well. So each category typically every year goes through an innovation ideation, and we've now started a process where we invite members from each of the Bergs to participate in that process as well, so that they are included in the process, they can share ideas for new flavors, platforms, et cetera. And one example, though, I want to talk about as well, so separate from the ideation, is a case that we recently had, actually is going on, we have it, it's a product that's in the market right now, limited drop on Pop-Tarts. So this is one where we were focused on, pride. Pop-Tarts is focused on, teen, Gen Z, and we do a lot of different limited editions sometimes for that cohort. And we dropped a limited edition Pop-Tarts Pride. It's like lemonade block party themed Pop-Tarts. And what we did is we partnered with GLAAD on this, and then GLAAD has a group called Neon, which is a subset of GLAAD focused on multicultural members of the LGBTQ+ community. And we partnered with an artist named Thaddeus Coates from that community, a Black artist, to actually create the artwork for this box. So he created it. First time we've actually used an independent artist to create art for one of our boxes. And then we also use something called Printed Fun, where you can print images on the Pop-Tarts on the icing, and it's all these fun different images. So that's an example of food innovation that we launched with the community. And that is something that we are dropping several hundred boxes every Friday in June, and we're partnering with local community organizations as well, because we know a lot of times within that space, it's a focus on chosen families sometimes in terms of having a safe space to be yourself, et cetera. And so we wanted to highlight safe spaces and communities across the country where the LGBTQ plus community can gather. So we are providing grants to several different organizations around the country who do this. And then again, also releasing the Pop-Tarts online so people can go and get boxes, and it's all then donated, the money donated to the organization. So quick example of, food side that we're doing as well in terms of innovation.
That's amazing. So I would like, before we go to closing and to drinks, I would like to leave everyone with the thinking of all the opportunities that can be generated through insights, on understanding our diversity, understanding and celebrating our diversity. And I wonder if you guys have any closing thoughts before we go grab a glass of rosé, maybe?
You want to go first?
Sure. The other thing I wanted to mention is we're also always looking at other companies, other industries in terms of, inspiration. And so we have a series called Rocket Talks, where we bring in leaders from other organizations to speak to us. So for example, we recently had the CMO of Sephora come in and speak to us. So we love getting inspiration from, maybe not even outside of food, right? Looking at the beauty industry, et cetera, to see how we can, just begin to think differently about things. And so that's the other thing, I just wanted to say in terms of how we're also enhancing our marketing strategy. So learning.
I think that's really important, that it's, getting that outside perspective and also the partnership piece that you talked about in the innovation, how many partners that you had to bring that to life, but like that's what really does bring that authenticity that we were talking about that is sometimes lacking. Where it feels like, okay, what does Pop-Tarts have to do with this? And like it could have easily come off very, like you were just trying to make a play in that space or something like that. But it's the partnerships and really that engagement and that true understanding that does bring that authenticity to it. And I think, you were talking about Sephora. We saw that chart earlier where food is kind of like tracking along with the average in terms of how we're doing this space. And that's really what we see when we look at other measures too. So when we look at that racial equity measure and look at top performers in food and beverage versus the total database, we're kind of like right in line with the average. So there's definitely a lot of upside based on what Manuel said about how much food plays a role in our culture and connection. We have the right to speak on these things. We have the right to bring these things to life for consumers. And so I think getting some of that outside perspective from other industries, like what's been done, and when we talk to consumers about what industries are really like pushing the needle in this space. Grooming and cosmetics and retail really kind of rise to the top because it is such a visual category where we're seeing the different models and different body shapes and sizes and people of color, and like we're seeing people like us that are trying on the clothes for us when we're shopping online, or there's a lot more colors of makeup than there have been in the past. So like consumers are noticing those kind of product innovations and the user experience on websites and things like that. So it definitely goes beyond just advertising, as we talked about previously. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to leave you with those two thoughts. First, like the strong need to be authentic and go beyond being just performative, and also the huge opportunity that diversity, equity, and inclusion is bringing us. So with that, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Erica. It's been a pleasure, and thank you, everybody.